Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Yeah, that's it. Show's over. That's all. The only notes I had. Today is May 31st, 2023. If you're watching it live, and you should be watching it live. I don't know why you wouldn't launch it live. I guess maybe if you were busy or you want to watch it on your own time, in which case, if you're watching it later, hi from the past, which is technically true now as well. No, so I knocked out the rest of the videos for the Atheist Debates Project today. They're live to patrons now, and they'll be live to other people over the coming days. One of them is a debate review of the debate that I did with Lewis. Perspective Philosophy is the name that he goes by on there. It was supposed to be about, is Christianity true? And instead it became kind of a discussion about non-typical philosophy stuff that might relate to Christianity loosely. Hell, I don't know. But I did the debate review for that. And then also Forrest had mentioned during a call from someone that he asked the caller about a contradiction between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And there's also been a lot of discussion about lists of biblical contradictions. And so I'm working on the biblical contradiction video or videos. And in the process, I just basically pulled this part out of it and went through and did a kind of detailed look at Genesis 1 versus Genesis 2, the various apologetics that people try to use to say there aren't contradictions, what does or doesn't or should or shouldn't count as a contradiction. Those are out. And the third or the fourth, I guess, video is four questions. If you're a patron of my Atheist Debates Project, you can submit questions to me in email. Plus, I get questions from people who aren't patrons. And sometimes I answer the question itself directly, like I just post it and say, hey, Matt, what do you think about this? Or why is this such and so? But I've been getting many questions that are touching on the same subject. So I just picked four quick topics and ran through those because it'll probably answer about 20 emails worth of questions. And call me lazy, call me efficient, whatever the heck it is, I'm going to knock it out as best I can. And so putting up a video that can address 20 different questions is way better than me typing up 20 different answers. On that note, in the news stuff today, and I know we're going to be getting far more political on this program, on the Hang Up, and even more on the line as we head towards an election season. But the Texas House of Representatives voted to impeach Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, and so he's temporarily been replaced while he awaits whatever the trial process is, which I don't fully know. I haven't had a time to look into it because I've been working on the videos and everything else. The U.S. House is voting on increasing the debt ceiling, and literally 45 minutes before we went live today, a piece of news that I probably would not have noticed came across my desk that may be relevant. And that is the actor, Danny Masterson, who was on That 70s Show, has just been found guilty of 2 counts of forcible rape by a jury. They were deadlocked on the third count, but they did find him guilty on 2 of those counts. And the reason this is perhaps relevant to me and what I do is the 2 women who were victims stayed silent for 10 years because the Church of Scientology basically worked and convinced them to keep their mouths shut. This is one example. Hey, Matt's not just going to pick on Christianity and Islam. This is what many different religions do. There is an element of control that isn't presented as if we control you, but as if you have some obligation to the church, to the organization, to your fellow congregants. Mormons are encouraged to be nice and keep their drama privately and take it to their preachers and stuff. This is yet another example of another religion intervening in a criminal setting in order to protect one of its adherents. The Catholic Church and many Protestant churches have been doing this with regard to pederast priests, shuffling them around to different parishes, doing whatever they can to stop investigations. Let's handle everything internally. Let's pay people off. It's if in fact there were a good God, and I get that that's not what Scientology is about, but if in fact there were a good God behind the Catholic Church or those others, that God is now culpable for failing to stop them from becoming a corrupt criminal organization that helps aid and abet abusers. And Scientology, while it's not appealing to a good God, is also a criminal organization. Sue me, bitches. I'm ready. Because they've been advocating to hide and cover up crimes of their members. How many? I don't know. We don't know. But we know in this case, that's what's been reported by the individuals who were victims here. And it's not the first time. You can go to clambeck.org if it's still around and listen to terrible stories and terrifying stories about Sea Org and other things like that. But I'm sitting here as someone who found his way out of religion. I was primarily a Southern Baptist growing up. Occasionally, we went to churches that weren't fully Southern Baptist. And when I was a teenager, I'd occasionally get to go to like Pentecostal churches because they would have the better concerts. So if you wanted to see Carmen or Petra or whatever, you were going to end up either at like Six Flags on Christian night or at one of the local Pentecostal churches. And that was great. I loved all that stuff. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. I think there was stuff going on occasionally on Tuesdays and teen lock-ins on the weekends and mission trips on the weekends. And my friends were there. I went to a high school that had over 900 kids in my graduating class. It was so big that they split the school in half the year after I graduated. So hello, Francis Howell. And despite that, or maybe because of it, my strongest connections were with the group of kids who I went to church with. And people from that church, I wasn't just active. I mean, I was there when my parents weren't. My parents were maybe Sunday morning services might be it. The one that I liked the least, because I'm not a morning person, or I wasn't, and I didn't like to get up to go to church early, but I wanted to be there the rest of the time to hang out with my friends. And because I was convinced that God existed, that God was real, that God wanted me to become a minister and preach. I was not super Christian. I did all kinds of stuff. I went to, I had lustful thoughts. I had sex before I was married. I drank alcohol. I did all the things, but just in teeny tiny little doses, because the second I got slightly out of line, there was immense guilt and an incredible guilt cycle that my church actively promoted. When you'd go to summer camp at Camp Windermere in the Lake of the Ozarks, you'd go to summer camp and you'd have lots of fun and do fun things. And then there were church services every night. And there was a predictable buildup of leading towards the final nights where everyone is just convinced that you are all absolutely awful, that you have not been engaging in your walk with Christ correctly, and you have given yourself over to sinful thoughts and harmful thoughts, and you're not doing what you're supposed to, and you're supposed to, rejoice in the Lord and be proud and stand for the gospel, and you need to get in here. I know that you got saved when you were a little kid, but you need to get in here tonight and rededicate your life to Jesus Christ, because you know that he is Lord, and that you are a sinner being convicted right now by the Holy Spirit. The manipulation tactics were incredible. And it always felt like not only was God telling people what was inside your head in a way they couldn't know, despite the fact that they absolutely could know, because people are pretty much the same. Teenagers are horny. And then doing whatever they could to keep you in the guilt cycle. You do something wrong, you get forgiveness. I used to mock Catholic friends because they could just do stuff wrong and then go into the confessional and it was all over with. They had a different type of guilt than what I had. I didn't have a confessional to go to. I didn't have a way to say a magic beaded prayer and get God to set aside my sins. I had to go in and ask God directly and admit that I was broken and a screw up over and over and over again. That's what youth group was for me and for most of the kids that I was hanging out with. And you know what? We loved it. It feels good when you've been convinced that you're a bad person in need of help. It feels good when that help, in whatever form it comes in, seems to come along. This is the way religions manipulate individuals. Scientology does it. Christianity does it in most of its different formats. There may be some that are, maybe some hippy-dippy gay pride church in California doesn't engage in a guilt cycle. But the kind of churches that I've seen doing that are just watered down nothing. They're like a community center that have Christianity painted over the top of them very loosely. And so I found my way out, and many others have as well, in part because of work we've done with various atheist organizations and shows. But I'm always intrigued at the people who find their way out of religion and the people who can't or don't. And everybody's got a different path and a different story that led to their deconstruction, led to becoming free from the shackles of religious upbringing, religious indoctrination. Everybody has different ways of dealing with their family members and their friends, because sometimes you find out that somebody else that you knew has secretly been an atheist for a while. They're just too afraid to say. What they needed was somebody else in the family to say so. Or maybe they shared it with you and you can then come out. Maybe you were the one who was scared. And it's a difficult situation to try to figure out, how do you deal with your family and friends that don't find their way out? Because now there's a situation where we were all on the same page, and we would sit around at family gatherings and we were all on the same page, and now we're not. And it's absolutely the person who fell away from religion who changed. And while that's true, that doesn't make it their fault. It doesn't mean they have something to apologize for. But if you're the person who's fallen away, you have to take a moment to recognize that you're the person in the relationship that changed. And that's true whether we're talking about your relationship to your family of birth or partners and spouses. I can't tell you over the years how many couples I've heard from where, my spouse and I, we got married, we were active in the church, and I don't believe anymore. And it's really causing problems because we are no longer on the same page. So who do you tell? When do you tell them? How do you go about coming out? The thing that I've recommended, just because I've seen messier versions, is to not make a big deal out of it. Just to not do a, hey, mom, dad, husband, wife, brother, friend, I need you to sit down because I've got something very important to tell you. I think that may be a mistake. I think instead it's much better just to ease into it, being absolutely straightforward and honest. And when people ask you what you believe, ask you what you're going through, to be honest about it. Say, hey, I've been thinking a lot about my religious beliefs and I'm not sure where I stand, or I don't think I necessarily believe that anymore. Don't have to use the A label right off the bat. And you may not even be comfortable with it. But you can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Pray for me, or let's talk about it, and ask your questions. There's an aspect of safety there for them because you're not coming at them going, you're wrong, your religion's stupid, your God's immoral, your church is corrupt, ha, 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 I found my way out, why you gotta be so stupid? You're not, you shouldn't be doing that under any circumstances, but there are things you can do where that's not the intent, where they feel like that's how you're coming at them. And instead, if you're just open and honest and gradually increasing your honest rejection of these things, I think it may be useful for better discussions. But I don't know. Greta Christina wrote a book several years ago, and you can find it online, but it's about coming out. It's called Coming Out Atheist, How to Do It, How to Help Each Other, and Why. It came out in paperback in April 2014. So about 9 years ago. You can find that if you like. And what Greta did was interviewed, I think, about 400 atheists who were former believers of some sort. And while many of them had a terrible, horrible story to tell about how bad life got after they came out, and some of them had wonderful stories about how great things were. But out of all the people that she interviewed, despite the negatives of it, only one person stood up and said, I really wish I'd never have come out to anybody. And so I don't know if there's any right way. And everybody's got a different backstory, and everybody has a different way of going about it. And my guest tonight is someone who Jimmy had on the show, had mentioned to me and said, hey, you should absolutely get her on the Hang Up. This is Stacy from the Stacy's Mom podcast, where she and her mother are working together on a podcast talking about how they deconstructed it. And so first of all, Stacy, welcome. How are you?
I'm really good. And that intro made me very emotional, I have to say. Just hearing everything you said about just your upbringing, it's like it brought me right back to my upbringing because it's so similar. And
I'll try not to slip into preacher voice too much.
No. It wasn't even the preaching. It was just, I was remembering about a year and a half ago, I was listening to you talking about your story of coming out of religion. And I hadn't thought about it until you were just talking about it again right now. And I was listening in my car and I kept pausing it. And there was times where I was wishing, oh my gosh, I wish I could talk to him and say, you're telling my story. And now here I am.
And now you're here and you get to tell it. So rather than me do it, you take some time. I'm serious. Tell everybody who you are, what your story is, how you and your mom got started the podcast and what's going on with that, so they get a grip of who you are. By the way, the phone call, the number is, lines are open right now. The number 720-619-2288. We'll be taking calls in a little bit. But Stacy, introduce yourself and tell everybody how you got from A to B.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Stacy, and I have been on the line before with Jimmy, and I just wanted to say thank you again for asking me to come back. It's really special to me, and it's really nice to meet you, Matt. So I did grow up in a Pentecostal home. So when you were talking about how going to the Pentecostal churches was the fun, the concerts, Petra, Carmen, I was like, yep, 100%. My upbringing was very theatrical as far as church services go. We were the church that spoke in tongues. We believed in prophecy and prophetic dreams and visions. You could come up to the front for healing, and people were claiming they were getting automatic healings. And again, there was no way to verify that, but the presence of God was so strong and tangible but everyone was sort of whipped up into a frenzy ahead of time that it was easy to just believe what was happening was true. I remember being told to just come expecting God to show up. So you were getting primed ahead of time for the following service before you even got there to just be expecting this move of God to be there. So, and like you were saying, I was nodding backstage. Yes, that's so true. I did do things in my teens as far as I waited till it was legal age here in Canada to drink, but I did drink and get drunk at 19 and everything. And fool around with my now husband, but the immense guilt that did come with it was so real, because I knew, okay, I'm giving into these temptations, but I feel so guilty as soon as it's over. And so I would go and just pray and ask God to forgive me. And of course, every sermon would be, if anyone here has done any of these things, which of course people have done those things. We're human. And so you're feeling like they're talking directly to me, so I better make things right with God. So you're constantly making things right with God. And the person that, I wasn't Catholic, so we didn't have to confess, but I would have this constant need that I put on myself of confessing, and I would go and confess to my mom. That was my way of sort of feeling like, okay, now I've told my sins. She would always tell me, you need to lighten up. You need to just don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm.
Just, you're not doing anything wrong. So, but I just always felt like I had to confess and tell someone, okay, this is what I did, or this is what I thought. And I had this pressure that I put on myself. So it wasn't until I got probably married, and then my husband and I struggled with infertility, and we for 4 years, and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. Well, I prayed and prayed. Um, and my husband, he didn't really grow up a Christian. I didn't actually want to marry a Christian, believe it or not. So as long as he had this kind of belief in God, I was okay with that. And he so we struggled with infertility, and so when we finally did get pregnant, thanks to doctors and modern medicine, I really wanted to just I felt like I owed it to God to just get very serious, and now I thought we have to raise our kids in a Christian home, and we have to just sort of buckle down, and this is my responsibility as a parent. I have to give these children back to God. And
Right.
that's when I really got very serious, and I'd say very, I don't the word very stingent, and, a little more militant in how I was. Um, and, the last few years of being a Christian, I stopped being a Pentecostal, and I got into Calvinism. So that was even more intense. And I got into it because I was feeling like Pentecostalism was at times like it was more word of faith, and I felt like they were cherry picking verses at times. And I really wanted to be serious about my theology and what I was believing, and I I just wanted to know God as seriously as I could. I didn't want to add anything to the
Right.
Bible. I didn't want to I was very serious about my faith, and I felt like possibly speaking in tongues was something that we didn't need to do anymore, that it died with the apostles, and continuing that on was just not biblical. So Calvinism sort of sat right with me, but that was kind of the beginning of my deconstruction, because I began questioning why we did things uh, a certain way. So going from there, that's what got me kind of questioning everything. I'm kind of jumping ahead really quick because I know we probably want to get to calls soon, but um, I started questioning everything about the Pentecostal side, and things were making sense as far as the healing, the prophecies, the miracles. I stopped believing in all of that. And then I started just questioning everything. And we left the Calvinist church, but they didn't let us leave the way that a Pentecostal church lets you leave. They excommunicated us publicly
Wow.
for 7 months, from the pulpit, calling us out, sending us letters, making formal announcements, naming our children, naming us, and just making a big spectacle of us. And I
As
know
if the
that they were,
process wasn't potentially lonely enough.
yeah, exactly. And so I know that, speaking of control in religions, I know that it wasn't to bring us back into the fold or anything. It was to keep everyone who was still there in control,
Yep.
like under their control. And because I remember being there when they were church disciplining someone else, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, this would be very humiliating to have your name publicly called out for something." And I don't even know what
Yeah.
that person had done, but I mean, it still didn't stop me because I thought I'm still gonna just do what I want to do, and So by calling us out multiple times over 7 months and making it a drawn out process, I just kept saying they're doing this to keep other people there so that they don't do what we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm
It's,
happy to
it's,
say, oh yeah, go
you know,
ahead.
I was just going to say it's pretty common because it works. It's, we people have said many times when people call into these shows, and by the way, the lines are open. We're always going to give priority to theists, but tonight for this, because we're talking about deconversions, if you're in chat and you want to talk about this, if you want to briefly tell your deconversion story or problems that you had, whatever, we'll keep an extra line open for atheists. But I still want to get theists to call in to talk and explain what's kept you in the faith, what's kept you from taking the steps that Stacy and I have taken. And when people say, "Hey, Matt," when you're on the phone with people on these shows, are you trying to convince them? Well, I suppose I'd be happy if I did, but I'm doing it for the benefit of the other people who are watching who share those beliefs, because the
Mhm.
person on the phone is made a public profession, and we know that they're less likely to change their mind, even in the face of strong evidence to the contrary. But the people at home were engaging their mirror neurons to say, wow, I don't want to look that foolish. Maybe I better take some time and reevaluate my thoughts. And
Yeah.
it's, I suppose the biggest difference is that I didn't force anybody to stay here, or else we're going to do that. This is about, hey, we're trying to help people escape the manipulation. And
Hmm.
we know that empathizing with someone who's just said something incredibly absurd and had that foolishness exposed is a strong motivator. And now it's not surprising to me that the church would do that in a, I don't know, much more nefarious way of saying, hey, so and so's been causing problems for us and isn't attending, and we're worried about them. And it doesn't even have to be like anything mean. It's just like, please pray for Stacy, pray for Stacy and her family. They're going through a lot right now. They're not on the same page as the rest of us. The devil's got a hold of them and are trying to convince them to leave our group.
Yeah.
And while they're all free to do that, we don't want anything like that to happen. We want them to remain here with us so that we can continue to support and love them, and they can continue. I should stop because I feel
Yeah.
like I'm in church.
It brings you right back, right? And not that you want to go back, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a bit of how we came out, and since then, I deconverted rather publicly because I don't really hide what I'm doing very well. I get excited. I get excited about learning, and I want to share it. And so I kind of fell into just being online. My sister-in-law, we came across, or I came across an interview that she did with Seth Andrews while I was listening to all my podcasts, and I was floored because I did not know that my sister-in-law had also deconverted. And I'm just listening to
Wow.
Seth Andrews one day, and I had told my husband the night before, oh my goodness, I just love his show. And I had gone on and on and on. And the next day, my YouTube auto played his next episode, and it was my sister-in-law. And I went running in and I was like, "You are not going to believe this." And she's quite well known on YouTube. She is one of the co-hosts on Truth Wanted. And we were both like, "What the actual heck? Why? What is she doing on Seth Andrews?" So my husband has a really big family, and it's hard to stay connected with every sibling because he's one of 12. And so I texted her, and she was shocked to hear from me. She said she was actually really nervous about me ever finding her
Mm.
content because of what I might think. And I was the last person she would have ever thought to hear from regarding this. And we just we picked up in such a different way because we hadn't seen each other in a while. And when she started, she's like, "Well, who have you been listening to?" And I started naming like all these content creators. And she's like, "The fact that you even know who these people are is blowing my mind right now." And so we she did a bit of a shout out on Twitter of she's like, I spoke to my sister-in-law and she tagged me. And from there, Neil, the 604 atheist, saw that and said, hey, if you ever want to come tell your story, I do deconversion stories. So I said, sure, I'll come on.
That's
And I
Neil.
did.
Neil's in chat. So
Mhm.
hi, Neil.
Hi, Neil. And I went on there, and from there, I just kind of people were like, "Hey, do you want to come on my channel? You want to come on my channel?" And I said, "Sure." I love hearing other people's stories, and I kept thinking, if this helps just one person, the way that other people's stories helped me, then yeah, I'll keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it kind of just snowballed, and I ended up getting asked to be a host on Skeptic Haven's network. And then my mom and I started a podcast 2 weeks ago, thanks to the help from the line. And now I'm here with you. So it's
It's
just been
wild.
amazing. Yeah.
And,
All from that one little tweet that she did, I feel.
and am
So
I right that your mom found her way out before you did?
yeah, kind of in her without telling me, because I sat down with her. Um, it was kind of like you said, you don't have to make a big deal about it when you're going through it all. Like, because I deconverted on my own. I was questioning everything, and sort of like you said, you can say to people like, "Hey, could you pray for me?" And that's kind of what I did at the beginning, because I was like, "What's happening?" But I had gone through times of doubt before, and I had come around. But that's because I knew how to sort of talk myself back into it. I'd listen to sermons, and I'd read more books, and I'd read the Bible, and but it just whatever, it didn't feel right. But this time I kind of knew, I don't know if I necessarily want to do all those things. I kind of want to pull at this thread, but I kept that to myself. And the only person that I would talk to really was my husband, because my husband,
Sure.
he's more of a skeptic. And he never really bought into everything. He came to church, and he really just he tried really hard. He was hoping one day it would all kind of click, and he would just be like, "Oh yes, this is all true." But it never did. He's very, very reasonable, and very skeptical. And so I knew it was safe to talk to him. And he did suggest once, "Do you want to talk to the pastor?" And I said no, because he's going to just push me back to where I know
Yeah.
he's gonna tell me what to read, and I don't wanna do that. He's like, "Okay, I'm just giving you a suggestion I thought you might wanna hear." And so when I did, he was the first person I actually did tell, "I don't think I believe in God," and his response was, "I don't think you're wrong, but maybe just take it really slow," because he didn't want me to freak out and be like, "Wait, no, I this is too scary for me," because I was really like, I was all in. And as soon as I told him that, I just felt this huge relief, and I was excited, and we were able to have like the best conversations we've ever had, because anytime he would try to bring certain things up, not in a confrontational way, just sort of like, "Hey, did you ever know that it says this in one part of the Bible and this in another?" And I would just say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." Like it kind of it freaked me out to hear outright contradictions, because I had such cognitive dissonance with so many
Yep.
things. And so finally I was like, let's talk about everything. And
Yeah. All of a
so
sudden, everything is, there's it's supposed to be a bad thing. It's an old saying that, without God, everything is permissible. And they're trying to suggest
Mhm.
that if you don't have a God or a grounding in God, it's just hedonism, and there's nothing to stop you from, running around slaughtering people and
Oh,
raping and pillaging. But what there's a different version of that. Without God, anything's permissible. Without religion, you're now free to explore the world. That doesn't mean that you
exactly.
have to go engage in every hedonistic desire and spend your life, in a drugged out sex cult. Although if you want to and you're still being
If you want,
responsible, I'm not going to judge you.
as
Um,
long as everyone consents, go for
yeah.
it.
But what it means is that all those times, religion's primary job is to squash your doubts while providing you with hope. And hope
Yes.
is probably the thing that most people will toss up. You atheists, I feel so sad for you. You don't have hope. I have hope. I have lots of hope. What I don't have is
Yeah.
hope for an afterlife. I wouldn't mind if there's an afterlife. It'd be a nice surprise, but I'm not living my life based on some unfounded promise of where I'm going to spend eternity. I'd rather work on the life right now. And that means that I can ask questions about anything without feeling like the second I've asked the question that I've already sinned. That
Exactly.
merely thinking about, hey, is it actually wrong for two people of the same gender to meet and fall in love? I get to think about that and reach whatever conclusion I reach without feeling like oppressed and pushed towards. Religion is 100% poisoning the well of everything that you'd like to perhaps consider. And for a lot of people, the heavy lifting of going through those moral dilemmas is more than they'll ever do. Most people don't take stock of their life in a big way because most people, they got a lot going on. They got partners, they got kids, they got a job, they got to figure out how to pay bills, they got to eat. They don't have time to sit around and go, I was thinking about determinism and free will and trying to determine whether or not we can hold individuals responsible or if we should just cut them some slack as they had no choice in the, and by the way, what does that say about me and my thoughts here? Should I reevaluate whether or not, veganism is a moral virtue or a moral duty? Most of them, nobody's going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So
Well,
it was amazing. Yep. Oh,
we've got
yay,
3 callers right now lining up. We have 2 already that are atheists. By the way, let me go ahead and knock this out. If you're a theist, not only do you have the opportunity to call in tonight, but also I'll be here Sunday with Jimmy for the Sunday show. You can call in then to defend what you believe and why. And I would love for people to be able to do that with the guests that are here on the Hang Up, including Stacy. But we're also launching a show called NBoss that you can apply for. You can go to www.qnaline.com, and there'll be a link there for NBoss where you will get an introduction followed by 10 uninterrupted minutes to present your case for whatever it is that you want to debate, whether it's, I don't know, I'm going to say flat earth just to annoy one person in general who I already blocked on email today, or the resurrection, or, Catholicism is the right one, or Protestantism is the right one, or whatever. And then you'll face the questions from the audience directed by the end boss for 30 minutes, 10 minutes of directed questions from the end boss, and then you're going to get the last word. It's not just a call-in show where we're going to go back and forth and I'm going to put you on hold and I'm probably going to talk 10 times more than you are. And then you're going to get all upset. Why I didn't get to say anything? Well, that's because what you said at the beginning was so absolutely ridiculous. It took me 10 minutes to refute to address it. You get that opportunity on Inbox, but that doesn't mean that you won't get similar opportunities tonight. And if you come and bring your A game explaining what you believe and why, it will always end up being a good call. And I would love for theists to call in, specifically if you're Baptist, Pentecostal, and would like to address what went wrong. What did Stacy and I get wrong that led to us being here? What is it that's different about you and what you believe and why you're convinced that it's real, that you feel should have convinced us as well? We are excited to take calls like that. But in the meantime, we have a couple other calls, and one of them I'm going to start with Sana in Germany. For those who don't know, this is Mrs. Dargendorp. How are you?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Stacy. I've heard of you. And
Hi,
hello, Matt.
I know of you. Hi.
And I today had to sit through a Baptist funeral that was held for Dargendorp because somewhere 25 years ago, he decided that he was going to get baptized because he was together with the preacher's daughter. And after that, he left the church, he deconverted, became a skeptic, and became a big Matt Dillahunty fan.
The service today, I got your email right before I went live on the show. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet. How are you doing?
A bit of rambling.
That's all right. I'm
horrible.
known for rambling. Yeah.
I'm horrible, but I guess I get through it. I think my biggest regret is that the only thing I could do was walk out of the church during the service.
Yeah, I noticed in your email you mentioned that the eulogy basically skipped the last 20 years of his life.
Yes.
Oh.
They stopped at the point where he was useful to the church as being their IT support. And after that, there was nothing.
Wow.
Mm.
And of course, you guys, how many years were you guys together?
16 and a half.
And during this funeral, during the service, you're not really mentioned or talked about. You're not interacting with the people who are there. It's a group of people telling a truncated, abbreviated lie about who Andy was.
Yes. So they started off with like his parents, well, his dad, because his mother already died, his brother, who he hadn't even spoken to in 12 years. And then there was like his church friends, his whatever, the kids he once had in church groups, and a lot of things about his ex-girlfriend who was a missionary and still is a missionary in Argentina.
Hmm.
And they stopped at the point where he deconverted. And they only mentioned like, oh yeah, the grief of his life partner. That was it.
It's strange. It's one of those things where, you know, Stacy's here and has
Yeah.
her church was far more manipulative than mine was, but I was also well removed from my church before I found my way free. So it was only potentially family members that were manipulative. I think the thing that's saddest for me, in addition to how they're treating and or ignoring you, is Andy was somebody who was in, like, I haven't streamed much in the last couple of weeks, and it's in part because we've been busy, and in part because every time I think about streaming, my first thought is, oh, cool, Dargendorp's going to be there. And as soon as I realize that he's not, my motivation to stream drops a little. And I will get back to streaming with regularity. But here's a guy who was, for all intents and purposes, a true friend to me in his actions and the things that he did for me and was supportive. We didn't have a ton of conversations. We never met in person. We weren't crazy close, and yet his absence impacts me every time I stream or every time I think about, sending somebody a link to the mat list where he put together all the talks and all the things I've done. And here at the service are his family members and people who used to know him, ignoring the man that he became and the life that he lived and the partner that was with him. It would be like if I died and my folks had a funeral for me talking about my high school girlfriend and how I entered the Navy as a good Southern Baptist and then ignored everything about that. Oh, we better not talk about Beth because that was his ex-wife, and that was during his atheist time. Or we better not talk about Arden, or we better not. It's an embarrassment that these people had a celebration of a life that they ignored and did not value and did not respect. And for them to extend that to being cruel, I think, to you is appalling. And I'm really, it's not surprising, Sana, but I'm very sorry that you had to go through with it. I guess the one uplifting point
I
is that
will
you don't have to keep going through it.
Yeah.
I will put it this way. I had deists and Catholics today basically being appalled about the way they treated me. Actually, my biggest advocate was a deistic, very esoteric, non-skeptical woman who basically told his dad to stop listening to scripture.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that if somebody who truly believes in a God can be on your side and defend that you are an atheist, that is something special.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Andy taught her how to be a better person. But none of these religious people are really good people.
No, it's the religion gets to help them cover it up. Religion gets to be the, oh, I'm a Baptist. And then everybody assumes that, oh, by default, you're a decent person. I've known too many Baptists to ever be fooled by that again.
Mhm. Can I just say something regarding the funeral? Because I was going to, I know that a lot, especially at a Baptist funeral, I've been to funerals in the church, and I know that they use these as an opportunity to almost use it like as an altar call and to be a witness so that other people would give their life to God. So I'm not excusing as to why they would completely ignore the fact that the last 20 years of his life he became an atheist, but I could see why they would ignore it, because they don't want people to know that the last 20 years he was an atheist, because it wouldn't work for what they're trying to sell, and know that he was a happy person, because they would want people to know this is the Christian life he had, and just kind of end it at that, because the rest of it would make them uncomfortable, and it wouldn't work to bring more people to giving their life to, right? Because the last Christian funeral I went to, it was more of a church service than anything else. It wasn't an actual funeral. And then I watched my friend's funeral who died last year during COVID. I watched it over live stream, and I was appalled, and I had already deconverted, but it was just an entire Catholic mass. There was no mention of my friend other than just we're here to remember her, and that was it. The rest of it was just Bible reading after Bible reading. So there, it's terrible that it's not actually about the person. And even still, I'm just really sorry that you felt invisible, I'm sure, and I'm just very sorry that it was not a good day, and with everything that you're going through.
Sana, what's
It
next
was
for you?
basically Monday I'm leaving the country. I have to move because his dad is throwing me out of the apartment.
Oh my God.
So Andy owned our apartment outright. But because of how the way things are, I'm getting thrown out even before the reading of the will. So by Monday, I will leave the country because I have nothing left here.
Have you? I mean, I don't want to open. We'll talk, I guess, offline so that you don't have to give out private information to anybody else. But let me just say, I had seen your email, but in the rush to get the videos done and get live tonight, I hadn't had a chance to read it. So thank you so much for calling in to share this. I wish it wasn't so far away, because as long as I would have been allowed to show up, I would have definitely been at the service, and definitely sitting with you, definitely glaring, if not outright challenging the people who just it's I hate people who use other people, like where the sole purpose is, let me see what I can get out of you, let me use what you are to help me as best as possible. And funerals, I constantly see this, and Stacy just mentioned it, where it becomes more of a church service. If you're a good Christian, they'll use that to preach and be, hey, let's have an altar call. Let's talk about all this because this is what was important to Matt. And if you're an atheist, then they'll use that as the let's have an altar call because Matt is burning in hell right now and would wish. They won't necessarily say that at most funerals, but they will allude to it, and it's incredibly frustrating. Please, by all means, son, stay in touch. Let me know where you land and how you're doing, and if there's any way that we can be of help after all this. But
I will,
because
I don't know where I'm gonna end up. I don't know what's going to happen. I know that the main reason I'm getting thrown out of the apartment is because his dad needs the apartment to house some Iranian Baptist refugees from their church.
if it were possible for people to actually roll over in their grave,
he would.
His eyes would be rolling so hard right now. And it's just, thanks so much for calling in with the update. My heart goes out to you for what you're dealing with.
Here's my call. Here's my call to everybody. Make sure you have some form of a will, a testament, a living will. Do something, because Andy had plans to make it, but he didn't make it until he did.
Yeah.
I will be thrown out of my house. I have no means, no money, nothing, but I will be fine. I will figure it out. But I have to live with the knowledge that some Baptist took over his life again. Don't do that to the ones you love.
Absolutely. Huge hugs from all of us here. You're getting a lot of love in chat. Thanks for calling in and giving us the update. And I will talk to you again as soon as we can.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Take care. I hate religion so fucking much. I hate what it does to people's brains. And while I can sit here and people be like, you know, in your heart, and then the pedantic debater guy in me is like, I don't know anything in my heart. It's my brain that knows. Well, speaking just as metaphorically, I don't see too many things that poison people's hearts more than religion, that divide families, where we can't love you anymore because you're not like us, where we loved you before, but now that you don't agree with us, we can't love you. I mean, I'd rather people have those divisions over something that might matter. Like, you know, if you're not going to be kind to and respectful to my partner, I don't need you in my life no matter what. But that's a legit thing to call out for. But saying, oh, you don't believe in the same magic that I believe in, and because of that, I'm going to do everything I can to destroy your life, to take away your rights, to take away your kids, to take over, so that we can, misuse and reuse the things that were you for our benefit, to use you while you're alive and then to use you after you're dead.
And I was just thinking the fact that they're now throwing her out where she doesn't have anywhere to go to house. I mean, at least it was someone that he cared about and loved. And why do they need to send that person that he cared about to just be gone, to just house strangers too? Like, I'm not saying that they don't need a house either, but it's just, it doesn't make any sense. If they're Baptist, they should be caring for the people in need, especially when they're in the time of grief. So
there's talk in chat about arranging a GoFundMe. Jimmy and I had talked about a number of different things. I don't know what the current plans are. If something like that happens, I will definitely do everything in my power to get it going and all that. But
Mhm.
we don't have any theist callers yet, but we do have a couple atheist callers, and one of them wants to talk a little bit about morality. And I will take that call in just a minute. I have the regular announcements that need to be made, and that is welcome. You're watching The Hang Up on The Line. The Line's a network run by Jimmy Snow Media that features myself and a number of other people. All the shows here are call-in. They are opportunities for you to tell us what you believe and why, or to challenge us on our views. We're doing everything we can to make sure that you get more and better opportunities. And we're not merely always talking about religion on the various shows. There's a great deal of science and skepticism, politics and human rights, trans rights, the LGBTQ community, human sexuality, parenting, all of those things. We are hoping that The Line becomes your one-stop shop for all things humanist humans. This week, tomorrow on Transatlantic Call-In Show. I don't have the right note because I know that's changed. Tomorrow's going to be Katy and Nominal Naomi. There we go. On the Transatlantic Call-In Show at 2 p.m. Central. Most of the shows here start at 6 or 7 p.m. Central. Transatlantic Call-In Show starts 5 hours early, if not for mostly because one of the primary hosts, Katy, is in the UK. So tomorrow will be Katy and Nominal Naomi. And you may really want to tune in for that because Naomi has been seriously pissing off and blowing the minds of conservatives because she's actually been able to, she's been milking her breast for her children. And they're like, wait a minute, a trans woman can lactate? Yes. And there's, it shouldn't be all that surprising because, we're all humans made from the same stuff. But it's funny because she did a debate with a fundamentalist and just blew them out of the water. And so call in, view tomorrow and call in and you'll get some updates from Naomi on that. The Sunday show is going to be me and Jimmy on Sunday. Man, I don't know how that happened. I mean, it's only been me and Jimmy almost every other Sunday. But Monday it's Skeptalk with John Gleason and his special guest. Tuesday I'll be Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock, and Telltale Atheist Owen Morgan will be on there next week. It's on Dying Out Loud. And next Wednesday, and you guys, I'm not even going to tell you. I'm not even going to tell you yet because you don't deserve to know. I'm going to wait. We should see if somebody in chat who doesn't actually know can actually guess who my guest is for next Wednesday. But
I'm excited.
On that note, let's get some call action going on. We've got Eddie in North Carolina, pronouns are he, him, with a question about morality. Welcome, Eddie. You're on the Hang Up on the Line.
Hey, hi, Matt. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I called to discuss the objectivity of morality, but then I heard your monologue, and I have to say that it really hit close to home because even when I was a Christian, like my denomination, I was like a Presbyterian, and our denomination of faith was like Calvinism, and one of the tenets of Calvinism is total depravity. And I remember in college, it was so weird that the pastor was telling us that we're totally depraved. And that was so weird. But as a Christian, like, it seemed, I never questioned it. I was like, yeah, I accept it. I'm totally depraved, even if I haven't done anything. It's like, as you said, you're creating a problem and then giving people the solution. You're creating a fake problem, and now it's really snake oil. You're giving someone a solution to a non-existent problem, and giving them all this sorts of guilt around certain things that are bullshit. But yeah, but your monologue hit close to home. But so the reason why I called is anytime I'm having a conversation with some of my friends that are theists, they always mention, okay, if God doesn't exist, like why should we care? Why do we have moral duties? And I've heard several people say this before, should they say that they're not comfortable with the idea that the Holocaust, for instance, we cannot say the Holocaust, for instance, isn't objectively wrong. Like, they always want it to be objective and not subjective. And so I don't know what your response. I don't know if I haven't really heard you talk about this. Like, what is your response to the critique that if we like disregard God or we discard God, like everything now becomes subjective and is now subjective and none depends on what human beings think and what's acceptable at the time, and it's all relative.
So I'm not completely sure what you're asking, but so a lot of people confuse objective morality with absolute morality, and when it comes to a moral foundation, my view is that the foundation itself is not entirely arbitrary, but it's subjective. There's no imperative to the universe that, for example, if we use well-being as a foundation, there's no imperative in the universe that well-being be the foundation. That's just the one that I'm happening to use. But once we agree that we'll use well-being as the foundation, then non-subjective assessments can be made. We can look at the goal, and we can assess objectively, or as objectively as anybody possibly could, whether or not an action furthers progress towards a goal, inhibits progress towards a goal, or is neutral with regard to that.
Yeah, but do you see a problem with the idea that we have to agree first? Like, we need agreement first before we can make progress. Like, if we lived in like a parallel society where like don't you see that? Do you think that that's a problem that we as a society? It depends on what we as a society find acceptable.
So, you in order for us to have discussions about it, we have to agree at some point. But merely saying, hey, a bunch of people got together and agreed that this is what morality is, or this is what the goal should be, doesn't mean that that goal is actually best for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, like, but isn't that a problem that we have to agree on something? Like, like atheists who respond, like, isn't that a problem? Like, what about if we agree on something that's bad, for instance? What if we agree that killing dogs, for instance, is okay? Like, that could be a problem if we don't have this objective standard for morality, is what someone could respond, I would say.
I'm not sure I see what the problem is that you're trying to address. I'm sorry. I've talked about morality about, I don't know, a gazillion times and done entire videos on it. Yes, if two people don't agree on a moral foundation, then the next thing that has to happen is they need to have the sort of discussion that gets them to agreement on a moral foundation. Because in the absence of that, if I think it's moral to give people the freedom to marry or love and marry whoever they want, and you think it's moral to run around slaughtering them for not agreeing with you, and until we can come to some foundation that we agree on, then we're just going to keep disagreeing, but you will still be wrong. What? Maybe you took that
Hello?
personal. No, we lost the caller.
Okay. I'm glad
So
you didn't quite understand, because I didn't quite get what he was trying to say.
yeah, I'm not sure. I think that it's kind of like, yes, in order to have agreement, you have to have agreement. If
Right.
if you want to use base 10 for math and I want to use base 8 for math, apart from coming up with a way to convert it, we can't even really talk. But if you're going to say that base 8 is the only
Mhm.
proper foundation for math, and I'm like, no, base 10, then we will never be able to do math together. And
No,
yes, we're stuck.
exactly.
But that's true even if we have different religions and different gods. It would be true even if there was a God who came down and said, I am the Lord thy God, and I'm telling you that base 8 is the only acceptable mathematics platform. It wouldn't matter, because God's opinion, I'm sorry, is just another opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, he can squish me like a bug, but so can the big guy down the street who might also want to switch to base 8.
That's true.
When you were in your process,
Mhm.
how much of it was based on, is there good reasons to believe in a God versus what are the potential consequences? What's my morality going to be like? What's my life going to be like? Am I going to be, without hope? What's my social circumstance being like? Was there a balance in evaluating those, or was there priority for one of those topics?
Well, I didn't think I was gonna lose all hope or anything. I didn't think my life was gonna just turn into shambles or I was gonna change like my personality or anything. My reason for staying in for so long was I was really afraid of hell, and I was afraid of um trying or of sorry, just one sec. I
You're
just got
good.
a text message. I was afraid from Jimmy.
That's happened to me many times. You'll get so
Okay.
good at multitasking, nobody will even know when you get a
I
text message.
I just wanted you to know why I was lost my train of thought. Um, so I was afraid of hell, and I was afraid of just the unpardonable sin, and I didn't really quite know what that was. And I thought if I do question and I turn out to be wrong, then if God doesn't forgive me, then I'm going to go to hell. So I had to get over that fear in order to um, continue with my questioning. And I've told this story so many times, so I apologize if anyone's heard it, but um, when I was talking to my husband about it, he said that he heard a quote on Twitter, or he read a quote because you read on Twitter, and it said that life is a spark between two identical voids, the one before birth and the one after death. And it made me really think that it was this moment was like an epiphany, and I said, "I don't remember anything before I was born. I have no recollection of what I was doing before I was born." So I would probably bet that it's gonna be very much the same after I die. And, it was like that fear of hell just sort of vanished, and I was able to move forward in my questioning. And then I I wanted to know how the Bible came to be the Bible, and when I found that there was stories in it like the Noah's Ark myth, um, from there, that's when it all came tumbling down, and I thought if there's even just one lie in the Bible, I can't trust it at all, because why would God lie? And it was exciting and scary, but worth it. So, yeah.
It's the process of deconstructing religion is one it's kind of fascinated me because I've spent 20 years now taking live calls and doing debates on as often as I can, um, and I've talked to so many people, and I love what Neil does, because Neil, the 604 Atheist, will have
Yes.
people on to tell their stories, and it's important because number one, it lets people know that, oh my gosh, your story is just like mine, and it also lets people know
Mhm.
that despite the similarities, not everybody's path is identical, and there are
Exactly.
different people who had to deal with different consequences, but also for some people, it was, let me apply skepticism and figure out, wow, there's no reason to believe this God stuff, or what the Bible
Mhm.
says about creationism doesn't match with what science has discovered. Genesis 1 got the order of events wrong compared to what we know
Mhm.
from science. And I know people who would say like, oh, if the Bible and science disagree, science is wrong. Um, I never had, I don't think, that level of commitment to the Bible, because I understood that if God and science disagreed, science is wrong. But the Bible could
Yes.
just be, humans getting it wrong about God.
Yeah.
And so, on the one hand, you've got the skeptic path of, is there truth here? But then you have a separate path, which is, does this feel right to me? Is
Mhm.
this, is this doing for my life what I thought it was? Am I reaching out to a God in my time of need and getting crickets in response? Um,
Yeah.
it's strange to me because I set out to be the best Christian I could be. I set out to demonstrate the truth of my beliefs to my roommate. And hi, Sean, congrats on your Murph. He did a big fitness challenge for Memorial Day weekend, and I'm very proud of him.
Yay.
But recognizing that this was the goal, when I started running into difficulties and was begging God, hey, give me something, anything. What should I say? What should I do? How should I respond to this? And hearing absolutely nothing. To think that people starving and dying of illness are reaching out, flailing about for a God and getting no response. People desperate to fulfill the Great Commission, to fulfill their obligation under 1 Peter 3:15, to make sure that we are actively working so that we are not only not impeding the Holy Spirit, but doing whatever we can to enable the Holy Spirit to work through us, to bring more people to the truth, and getting nothing, just feeling absolutely stuck. It's like being in a game with God supposedly coaching from the side, just standing there with his arms folded, offering no advice, no information, not objecting to a referee call, not doing anything to keep the other players from throwing an elbow. It's nothing. Yeah. How long can God stay in this hide and seek mode and still have people believe? I genuinely don't understand. I kind of wish we could get some theists to address it today. I don't know if that's going to happen much at all.
Well, the one time no, more than once, but one time where it was really evident that I was like, where are you, God, is when we were going through infertility and everyone around us was getting pregnant. And I was just like, okay, I believe you say we have to have the faith of a mustard seed. I believe so strongly. Like I was reading all the passages in the Bible where women were barren and believing God for a baby and people were praying for us. And I just cried. I remember one time sitting by my bed and just like crying out to God, and like I was bawling, and I was like, how could you how could you see me in my like absolute despair and ignore these tears, because all I want is a baby. Like, I was like, I waited till I was married for sex. I did everything that I thought I should do. I've been so faithful, and you're just keeping this? Like my husband will be a great dad. And so I never felt more alone. And at that time it's, you'd think, why didn't you wake up then? But
it's, by the time when Beth and I were trying to have kids and we couldn't, my brother also, couldn't have kids, ended up adopting two wonderful, brilliant, beautiful, I love my niece and nephew so much. I don't get to hang out with them, and I don't get to spend much time with them at all. But there was no opportunity for us, because we were already atheists, to reach out and flail about for God. So we're just relying on science, and the science was problematic in trying to come up with solutions for couples that couldn't have kids. And I can just imagine there were relatives who would view our inability to have a kid, if they knew we were doing it, some of them knew, some of them didn't, that this was punishment for our apostasy. And others, including a relative pretty close to me, felt that they got a message from God, that God was going to gift us a miracle baby that was going to bring us back to the fold. Not only did God not gift us a miracle baby, we got divorced. We're still great friends, but we are divorced. I mean, we haven't been together for years now. And so this notion, I can imagine the difficulty when people come up to me, and it doesn't happen as often now because enough people know the story that I no longer get people really come up going, who hurt you? What happened in your church that led you to a bad? They've stopped kind of making assumptions on some of that.
Yeah.
But there's a notion that, God's waiting around to bring Matt back after he raptures everybody. So they're so tied into this notion that I have to be some kind of Christian spiritual leader that they'll put that out there.
Yeah. Well, I did hear that you're one of the elect, so.
Yeah, I hear that. God's going to be bringing me back to the fold, all this other stuff. Just bizarre. And how wrong could you be by saying, hey, God told me that he's going to give you guys a baby, which is going to bring you back to the fold. And then not only do we not have a baby, that we get divorced.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to happen.
They're probably, they're still Christian. I'm sure those people who said that believed that. And then they were like, oh, well, and then it's like, well, how do they, come around to why they got that wrong? Did God say that? Who was the wrong one in that situation?
It'll be interesting. We've got Trudy, pronouns of she, her, from California, wants to talk about her deconstruction at age 55. Well, welcome to the Hang Up on the Line, Trudy. You're on with Matt and Stacy.
Well, thank you. It's great that you're taking my call. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hi.
Yeah, my earliest memory was we lived in a labor camp in Arkansas when I was 5 years old, and we'd get up before sunrise and load in the back of a truck and go out and harvest vegetables. Anyway, they had a open air service every Sunday, and a lot of people would answer the altar calls. And 5 years old, I'm saying, oh, I want to be saved. And so, I got really into church for all my life. I even believed that I was not supposed to get an education, that I was supposed to dedicate myself to being a good wife and mother and housekeeper and all that crap. And which is what I did. And then when I was about 55-ish, I got on the internet, and MSNBC used to have a message board called Religion and Ethics. And so I went on there, and I found out there was people that were not monsters, that were atheists. And I liked them. And so then I learned about Noah's flood and how the Bible was constructed, and no historic Jesus, and a lot of stuff like that. And so I started doubting, and then the music would pull me back in. It touched my emotions so much, but I finally broke free.
I might have to do a video specifically. I mean, I've done some videos about the music in church, but I mean, there's a number of people who've been pulled back in, including a prominent short-term atheist who came out, worked with the atheist community for a while, and then went and fell back into religion in part because they missed the music, which always struck me as, for me, it's one of the silliest reasons I've ever heard to go back to being a believer.
Yeah.
But it may not be a silly reason to act like you believe.
Yeah. When I was just starting to doubt was when Bob Dylan came out with his religious albums. And, I've always loved and respected Dylan. So that made me doubt myself. But anyway, I would tell people, I don't believe anymore. I'm an atheist. And the people that knew me would say, oh, Trudy, you're the best Christian I know. You're still a Christian and you're saved. And they wouldn't listen. They don't care what I say. That's pretty much sums it up.
So at 55, how difficult was it for you? What fallout did you have to deal with that was problematic?
Well, I've got 9 sisters and brothers, and most of them are pretty religious, and one of them quit talking to me. But I had my mother, who was an atheist, to hold on to. So I didn't care. I knew I was probably right.
Yeah, it's like Stacy's mom podcast, the original version.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Stacy also has her mom to talk to on that.
Yeah, we
Oh, that's
deconverted. Yeah, and so we started a podcast where we kind of talk about our story, and she deconverted, and I had no idea. And then when I told her that I was no longer a Christian, she's like, "Oh my gosh, Stacy, I haven't believed in like 30 years." So I thought I was going to shock her, and she ended up shocking me. So yeah.
Well, my mother
I'm
was
glad that-
99 when she died, and we knew she was dying. And all the family kept coming and wanting to pray with her, and she said, "Get the fuck away from me."
I could see my mom saying that. Wow.
Well,
Wow.
Trudy, thanks for calling in so much to share your
Mhm.
story. I appreciate it greatly.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
You too.
You too, Trudy. That's
Yeah.
it's always surprising to me. My brother, he's probably in chat right now with the show. He's my favorite person, and we get along despite our disagreements. And he's been there for me right down the line, including when I had my heart surgery. It was a big help to me and Arden. I love my parents. My dad just came down and visited. We are never going to see eye to eye. They have flatly pointed out that they are, in fact, closed-minded on this. They don't care to discuss it anymore. They're going to go to their grave sad and miserable that their son is leading people to hell, but that's okay because they'll get to go be with Jesus in Happy Land. When I listen to you, and you've got your mom who, when you come out, she's like, "Hey, I've been there for 30 years. I just wasn't saying anything." And then I've got friends like, Dan Barker, who, when he came out, his parents still believed, but they ended up, because of his conversations with them and everything else, they are also non-believers. I wish, of all the things that I could have, I mean, I know people who are like, "Oh, I wish I had a relationship with my parents." I have a relationship with my parents. It's generally good. I love them dearly, even if we don't always agree or even like each other on some occasions. But to be
Right.
able to comfortably sit down with my parents and express my frustration at what religion is doing to to the people, to the government, to our society, and have something closer to support than to just, hey, we're in the end times and the devil's doing stuff, and it's spiritual warfare, and we've only got 5 or 6 more years before Jesus comes back. Every time I turn around, it's we've started a new clock on Jesus coming back. I mean, they don't literally put a clock on it, but
I know what you mean.
I've been hearing how we're in the end times the entire 54 years that I've been alive.
Me too. Well, my 30 something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
sure. Yeah. If you're 54, you're a miracle. I've never seen anybody with flawless skin and no gray, at 54. That's amazing.
I have gray, but yeah.
Well, you hide it well.
Yeah. Thank you. I was going to say that I was that Christian person in our family. So, I mean, speaking of hope, don't give up hope, because we were able to repair some relationships that were destroyed because of religion. So we were able to reconnect with really important people in our family that we didn't talk to for some time because of religion. And that was huge. And when we finally did get to sit down, it was just like, oh my gosh, we can finally talk and just be there for each other. And they were like, you can finally see, and we're so happy for you. And so I was that Christian person like your parents. And so there has been some repairs in kind of the opposite way, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it does. It poisons so much, and there were years lost, but thankfully they're getting back on track. So,
well, here's our chance.
mhm.
We've got a theist caller who's calling in to ask us a question, and I'm gonna introduce him, let him state his question, and let you go first while I sit here and
Me?
make sure
Okay.
that I'm trying to facilitate good conversations as much as possible. So, Rick, a theist from Nevada, pronouns are he, him. Welcome to the Hang Up on the Line. You're on the show with Stacy and Matt.
Oh, thank you. How are you guys?
Hi. Good.
Doing well.
Yeah, so my question is, do you guys fear death?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
You have no fear of death whatsoever.
No,
the fears
honestly.
that I have aren't about
Mm-hmm.
being dead or about
Yeah.
there being an end. What I probably have fears of is the manner in which death might come about. I'd rather
Yeah.
not be in long, protracted suffering, which is one of the many
Mhm.
reasons why I'm a supporter of death with dignity. But also, I think probably, I've talked about it enough. I think probably the biggest fear that I have, even though I know I won't be aware of it, is for my mind to go from dementia, Alzheimer's, something like that, to where I'm now a burden to some extent from my perspective. I'm not remotely saying that everybody in this situation is. I would feel that way, but also looking at it to know that I'm not me anymore, that I'm still here and ambulatory and able to communicate, but I'm definitely not me. That kind of alienation syndrome of being yourself and not yourself is a terrifying
Yeah.
prospect, even though fundamentally I know I won't be experiencing that. I won't be aware of it, if that makes sense. But apart from that, I don't have any fear of being dead, because I don't think being dead is like anything. I won't be experiencing it. I didn't experience not being born. I don't
Yeah.
plan to be experiencing being dead.
No. And I kind of think of it as, I mean, I've had surgery a couple times and going under. I imagine it kind of being like that. The only thing that I guess would be afraid of is just going before my kids are grown. That's the only
Mm.
thing that I don't want to think about necessarily, because it would make me
Yeah.
sad. But if I live to be 80 and they're grown and married and happy, and that's every parent's dream, then no, it's just a natural part of life. And I don't actually fear being dead at all. So
Right. So, I mean, what if you're wrong about everything?
Well,
then,
And
I don't
I'm
know
just-
that there's
I'm just
anything I
saying-
can.
I'm just asking. I'm being respectful.
Sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. No. Well, it's not so much the notion of a soul is one of the most clearly, obviously false claims within Christianity. We know enough about how the brain works and identity and things like that, that there's no room left for a soul. And so it would be very surprising for me to die and then be conscious in some sort of afterlife. And
mhm.
if I find myself in that situation, then I would want to know, okay, what's going on? What am I supposed to do about this? What happens next? I'll just deal with it at the time. If there's some God who's going to stand there in judgment of me, that God is going to be sorely disappointed, because if he created me and made me incapable of reaching a sound evidence-based conclusion about what I needed to do for the right afterlife, then that's his fault. Okay, not mine. I've been here and been intellectually honest and rigorous. I've investigated this subject probably
Mhm.
more than anybody in your church. Not necessarily that you're in church, but I mean, I've spent more time involved in this than anyone other than preachers. I have sincerely pursued it. I have found the claims and accusations about who God is and what God wants to be not only without evidence, but without any redeeming qualities deserving of respect. And so a God, if he exists, can send me to hell, can grant me a heaven, can do whatever the heck he wants me in an afterlife. There's nothing I can do about it. So if I'm wrong, then I'm going to be wrong. But I will sit there in my wrongness, being completely comfortable and confident that I was honest and sincere in my pursuit. And the God that is perhaps tormenting me is an immoral piece of shit, undeserving of anybody's love or attention or respect.
Gotcha.
What if,
I mean,
like, granted, I don't know.
agree with both of you guys, by the way, about religion. I mean, the reason I believe that is because I know people let you down, like pastors, ministers. A lot of people put them on pedestals, and
The problem is that
they
while people can let
they
you
do
down,
things that they let you down, yeah, because
yeah,
they're people,
Rick,
and they're
I
not
understand
beyond falling.
Rick, I understand people can let you down, but some people have
Mhm.
not let me down. And God has let me down every single time. God is the only agent with a perfect track record of letting people down.
Well, I think I don't believe that myself.
What's God
I
done for
believe
anybody?
God.
Demonstrate when God has helped anyone ever in the history of the world.
Well, the thing is, God is pure love. He loves everybody. He doesn't just love me. He loves you. He loves everybody. So that's hard for people to comprehend sometimes. Are you there?
Well, love, can God do things?
Yes, he can do a lot of things.
Can he do things to me, with me, for me?
Of course.
Then your God doesn't exist, because a God that loved me would have already done things for me, with me, and to me in a way where I could detect it. So you're basically saying that there's a God out there that is love that doesn't do anything loving.
No, I mean,
What's God ever done? Point to anything that God has ever done for anybody.
Well, I mean, like, let me see. What has God done? He created the universe. He created this planet. I know you're going to ask me that, but I believe that. I believe he created this planet.
I get, Rick, I get that that's what you believe. Rick, I get that that's what you believe.
Okay.
We need to know, Rick, we need to know why you believe it. You can't just say, oh, I believe that God helped me win the lottery. I believe that God found my missing shoe. I believe that God found my missing car keys. I believe that God helped me find my loving partner. That's what you believe God did. I'm asking, what can you show God has done?
Well, I'm going by what the Bible says, basically.
Well, then, no, sir. You're not, because you have this concept of God being pure love, and God doing things. You're not necessarily consistent with the Bible in your view of God. So, for example, is it loving and correct to allow human beings to own other human beings as slaves?
Well, that I've heard you say that before, but I mean, apparently, in times past, that was possible. That was something that was done.
That's not what I asked you.
I don't know. I'm just okay.
Rick,
I'm just saying, yeah, that
Rick,
God
stop.
allowed that.
Rick, stop.
Okay. All right.
What I asked was if it is loving and correct to allow humans to own other humans, not whether or not it happened in the past. Is it loving and correct and moral to allow humans to own other humans? Is it loving and correct and moral to have women be valued as less than men?
Yeah, I don't think so. My
Yet the
honest
Bible,
opinion, no, I don't.
yet the Bible allows for both of those as a reflection of what God wants.
Well, I don't know if that was God or if the devil was, part of that or what.
You're up, Stacy. Jump in.
Well, I was always told from sermons that the Bible is literally God's love letter. So if you're claiming that God is love and that's what is written in his so-called love letter, then I don't think God is love, because you can go to the Noah's Ark myth. He flooded the entire earth and just killed every single living person except for a handful of people and some animals. So, and owning
I know,
other
but
people, that's
the
not
reason
love.
he
And
did
just
it,
because it happened at some point in history doesn't make it right just because it happened. There's a lot of things that have
well,
happened that doesn't mean it was
that's,
right.
I know, but that's, to me,
And if
that
God is the
is,
same
I,
yesterday,
I,
today, and forever, just like the Bible says, he's
yeah,
not a loving God. And he's not someone, even
well,
if he was real, that I would want to serve or base my entire life around at all
because of,
anymore.
because he drowned those people.
For many reasons. Many
Okay,
reasons. Not
but
because it's not true.
what isn't true?
Well,
The story about
God.
Noah's Ark?
The entire
No,
the entire
the
earth
entire
was
thing.
never flooded and covered with water. That's
No,
simply not
but
true.
I'm just saying, based on that story, if that was true, I wouldn't want to
Mhm.
serve that God. I'm just using an
Mhm.
example that you would relate to,
Okay,
because you're using the
yeah,
Bible.
okay, I'm just saying, my understanding why God flooded the earth is because there was a lot of evil on the planet at the time. And then Noah
It doesn't
actually
make it
warned all those.
right.
Wait,
It
you
does.
I
think
know, but
Noah
I'm
warned
not going to
you,
question
you
that
think
one.
Noah you think Noah warned everybody who wound up being drowned?
He warned.
He was
Yeah, he
building
warned
a
people.
boat.
Yeah,
No.
they were
Stop,
wondering what he
Rick.
was
Rick,
doing.
stop. Rick,
Okay,
stop and
all right.
listen to me very carefully and try to think. The
Okay,
story of Noah is that God flooded the entire earth, killing everyone except for 8 people, correct?
right,
Did Noah,
right.
before the flood, talk to everybody out there who ended up dead?
I don't think he talked to everybody, but I think he
Yeah.
warned people.
Then what good is it for him to warn a few people close to him or people in the vicinity of where he's building this ark? All those other people are now dead and they didn't get warned. So what difference does
He
it
had no
make if
clue.
Noah warned people?
Well, at that time, I don't really know how many people there actually were on the planet, but I know that he did warn people, and a lot of people were wondering why he was building an ark.
The
You know,
people who just probably happened to walk by, and they were told.
people that
I
were,
was always told that a handful. It was just the people who saw him building the boat and mocking him. So they were told. That's not the entire world's population.
What good does it
yeah.
do to warn
Again,
the
if
people
this
who happen
story
to be
was
walking
true.
by?
I know.
I mean,
But that's what I was.
I understand where you're coming from, what you're saying, but I
But
believe
do you
that
hear how
he.
ridiculous this story is? Like, do you hear when you're
No,
saying, like, when you hear it?
I don't think it's ridiculous at all.
Why not?
At all, because it happened. That's why.
How do you know it happened?
Well, they found the ark.
No, they've not found the
They
ark.
didn't.
Okay. Well, they said they did.
Okay.
Ooh.
People have said all kinds of stuff. Do you believe stuff just because people say it? Then why don't you believe me?
Well, I mean, the guy had evidence of the boards and stuff that were,
Okay.
I mean,
this
It's
This is
just like the
fair.
cities that all travel through. They
this
dug
is-
those up.
No, Rick, this is unfair. I'm going to let you go now because at this point,
Okay.
it's no good for the show for someone who's as misinformed as you are for us to just keep saying, nuh-uh, no, and you don't seem to understand. I don't want to make you feel bad.
Sure.
You need to go out
right.
and do some research beyond just the pro-Christian crap you've heard, because they haven't found Noah's Ark. It's not possible for the entire earth to have been flooded. Noah didn't go out to warn people. He responded to people mocking him in the story. There's zero evidence that the story actually happened. And that's the same thing for Genesis, for the Eden story, for pretty much anything that exists in the Bible. You have been told things and you accept them. You need to now start to care whether or not they're actually true and go out and find someone to help you research to figure out reality, because
Can I ask you one question before I go?
You are not as in touch with reality as you think. Yes, you can ask a question.
What about the people that have died and come back and told?
I'm not aware of anybody who has actually died and come back whose story can be verified about what they experienced. We have people who have admitted to lying about it, and we have people for whom they have not admitted to lying about it. But the fact that you think you went to heaven while your brain was dying and not functioning correctly doesn't mean there's a heaven. And people who die and have the near-death experiences, not the actual death experience, the near-death experiences, they experience religious iconography that is consistent with the religion that they had at the time. Catholics tend to see Catholic iconology. Protestants tend to see Protestant iconology. There isn't a way to verify that they've been somewhere merely because they relay a story.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Yeah. It's incredibly difficult. And I don't want to look like I'm just picking on somebody, because Rick's a nice guy who is just very confused. He
you
heard.
were right. You have to. You have to want to care about what you believe.
Yeah.
So
when you hear something that is consistent with what you'd like to believe, or a story that you've been told since you were a kid, I understand the temptation to not verify whether or not the story is true, especially when we're talking about stories for which you can't verify. What could we possibly do to verify that someone died and went to heaven? They don't come back with souvenirs.
Yeah.
They don't come back with video footage. All they can do is tell a story. But how is the near-death experience of people talking about their supposed trip to heaven, how is that different from the people who claim that they were abducted by aliens and taken to another planet? They don't have evidence. And when people show that, like, for example, with the alien abduction stories, that couldn't happen because you weren't gone that long. Now, all of a sudden, we get alien abduction stories where the aliens are able to manipulate time so that you were gone for a week, but it only took a minute. Now, I can't rule that out because I don't know every technology that's out there. I don't know whether aliens are visiting or what they can do. There's no way for me to prove it wrong. So we're then stuck. And if a story about an alien abduction is plausible and a story about going to heaven is considered plausible, where do we draw the line? What story could someone say that you think is not believable if you're going to be willing to accept that somebody came and gave you a story about the time they visited heaven?
Yeah. Well, there's even people who have stories about visiting hell. So there's even that side of it.
All right. We got 2 calls to get to, and then we're going to go on to Super Chats for tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. Lori is calling from Canada. Pronouns are she, her. Where in Canada? Well, don't tell me exactly where in Canada, but hey, Lori, welcome to the line.
I'm in Canada.
Hey, Matt and Stacy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. I'm calling from near Toronto in Ontario, Canada, Matt.
Nice.
Just wanted to call in. Yeah, just wanted to call in and say how much I respect how articulate and knowledgeable you both are in the debates on your show. So thank you. I am not as knowledgeable as you are about specific quotes and passages from various Bibles, but I do believe in engaging theists and having intelligent discussion. It's very important instead of polarizing or dismissing people. I do feel that's important if we're going to make progress. And my question is, I would like to be a better ambassador of this type of discussion to help influence people in the moment in conversations that I'm having. And I was wondering if you have any suggestions about, other than your wonderful show, what other resources you recommend? Do you have like a frequently asked question or common myth-busting guide? Matt, are you going to write a new book? Just would like to hear more about other resources.
I'll give you the short version, and then we'll see if Stacy has stuff to add to it. So when I first got involved with this, I basically built exactly that. There was a wiki constructed called ironchariots.org. It no longer exists. And I don't know who has access to the archive and backup. I stopped working on it, passed it off to Russell Glasser, who tried to pass it back, and we passed it out to some other people. It eventually just died. And the plan was for it to be a one-stop resource for people who had questions about apologetics. I won't be doing that again. The book that I'm currently working on is useful for that a little bit, but it's not quite an FAQ. The best resources I point to are infidels.org. Infidels.org is a website with loads of information and a classical library and a modern library where you can go read everything from Voltaire and Robert Greene Ingersoll, philosophers in the past, to modern thinkers on this who are engaged in debates and challenging from a strong philosophical perspective and from a sort of lay perspective as well. The other resource that I often do, which isn't so much about religion, is talkorigins.org. They have an index to creationist claims that if you go to talkorigins.org/indexcc, you will find this complete list of creationist claims. It's incredibly long. It's cataloged there. You can pick something, and they're sorted by categories, like, for example, and they're all numbered. So CC363 is a claim that fossilization requires rapid burial or the organism will decay. It's there as a really quick description. It shows the source of where this claim came from and what the response is, which is that bones can survive for over a year before being buried. Shells can last decades or even centuries. In fact, some fossils have been eroded or encrusted or bored by other animals that have been found, showing that long times passed before they were buried. So if you're in a debate with a creationist, and there's a bunch more here just on this one, you can go through that sorted list. Those are my two favorite resources on the skeptic front. There are other resources that are, I think, perhaps supposed to be pro-Christian, but they're still useful. And I've mentioned before e-sword.net, the utility I use for Bible study and Bible version comparison and Bible dictionary and all that to look up things. And the other one is earlychristianwritings.com, which will list in chronological order the various Christian writings. Like the first thing listed is the Passion narrative, which doesn't exist in the Bible. It's dated somewhere between 30 to 60 AD. It will tell you what we know about it. It will provide quotes from it, scholarly articles and stuff like that. Those are probably my 3 or 4 biggest resources right now.
Great. Thank you so much to you both. My preferred method is still this show. It's great. Thanks for the great service that you do, but I do appreciate the additional resources. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And by the way, my own YouTube channel, the Atheist Debates thing, is basically me posting 4 videos a month where here's my thoughts on a particular subject, so that, you know, if you consider it kind of like an addendum to the shows. The shows we're having the live conversations, and my videos are me saying, you know, like just today I posted one which will be live to patrons now, but it'll be live to everybody else in 2 days, about the contradictions between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, which ones are worth exploring and perhaps using in arguments and discussions, and which ones you should stay the heck away from because there's just too much apologetics and mud surrounding them.
Oh, I don't even know how I missed that. Thanks for mentioning it. I'll have to look that up.
Absolutely. Stacy, do you have recommended resources that you liked and that helped you?
Yeah, early in my deconversion, I was just trying to find everything I could get my hands on. And actually, one YouTube channel that I found really helpful. I haven't really engaged in any debates or anything, but just for seeing contradictions and stuff that helped me was Holy Kool-Aid's channel. I really like the way that he laid things out. He goes into a lot of like the biblical narratives, and I really enjoy his style. So I would suggest checking out his content. So
That's Holy Kool-Aid, Stacy? Is that what you said?
yeah, Holy Kool-Aid on
Great.
YouTube.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. On YouTube.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks, Lori.
And of course, the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna take a snapshot of my face and make something out of it, but we'll figure that out later.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fun, but I'll tell you afterwards. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Craig in Texas, pronouns are he, him. Welcome to Hang Up on the Line.
Thank you, Matt and Stacy. How you guys doing?
We're all right.
Really
We're
good.
running short on time. You get to be the
Awesome.
final caller
Okay.
of the
Ooh.
day.
Okay. I've been going through my Okay, the thing is, I was baptized a Catholic when I was 15. Now, the reason I guess that was I was going to a junior high school that was a private boarding junior high school, all male. And I decided to get baptized because I thought that was the thing to do at the time. But as time went on, I started to deconvert. I know you're in the Navy, and I was also retired from the Navy. I think what happened was in my last duty station in Pensacola, I took a community college class, which was mythology. How I took it, I don't know. But as I was reading Homer and the Iliad and whatnot, I thought, this sounds sort of like religion. But then I got reprimanded saying that religion was true. I'm like, well, and it's got into a big stink. That's one of the reasons. The other thing was, I'm sorry if I'm nervous. I was at a bookstore. I was at a bookstore with my son, who was 5 at the time, and he likes to go to the little play area. So I went and grabbed a couple of magazines, and I come back, start reading them. And this couple comes up, and they were just looking at me. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I took your seat. Do you want it back?" And he asked me to go read something else. I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about? Did you go read something else?" Because I had like a Maxim, a Sports Illustrated. I think it was a swimsuit edition. I don't know. I said, "Well, what do you want me to go read?" He goes, "How about giving your life to Jesus Christ?" And for some reason, that just pissed me off. I just pretty much told him to F himself. And then afterwards, I'm thinking, I start going onto the internet. I'm realizing I cannot be the only one who feels this way, that I think religion is a crock of hooey. So I started going on the internet, looking at websites called Losing My Religion. And as I'm looking through that, I kind of seem to reconcile with it about how they're saying how the Smurfs are satanic, rock music is satanic. You know, it was just crock of shit. And so I've been kind of going through deconversion since then. And Matt, I've been listening to you for the last year and a half, and I say I've learned more from you than any other pastor. That's things.
Well, I've heard about
Yes, sir. I've heard about Exodus 21, how it's owning people as property, how that's wrong. And the thing is, they're saying, well, if you're atheist, you can rape and kill all you want. Well, the thing about that is raping and killing is against the law, and I can spend my life in prison. So there's that.
Not only that, but if you listen to like Penn Jillette famously said, I do rape and kill just as much as I want. I want to do it 0.
Yeah, which is nothing. I know. That's 0. Yes, sir. So Yeah, 2 years ago, my mom had broke her hip. She lives up in Oregon, and I went up to visit her. And during that time, I usually go on a walk, and I was walking past this Catholic church. And there's a big old marquee out there that said, rediscover your Catholic faith. And I'm kind of looking at it, I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that crap. But then the day came, and there's nothing better to do, so I just went and checked it out. And it's pretty much nothing I haven't heard before. It's like with religion, it's just nothing new. Hey, guess what? This happened. Guess what? This new happened. It's just the same stuff over and over again. And it's just tired. So yeah, pretty much, I can't go back. There's just no point to it. It's like asking a runaway slave to go back to his master. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hear you. It is a difficult process that it gets easier the further removed you are from the last back and forth.
Big time.
I got to move on to some super chats and stuff, Craig, but
Yes,
thanks
sir.
so much for calling in.
Yes, sir. It's great talking to you. I appreciate
Continue on
Thanks
your
so
journey.
much,
Yes, sir.
Craig.
All
Take
right.
care.
Stacy, do you have time to continue and split these super
I
chats?
have all the time. Yes.
Awesome. Let me get them ready right there. See, look at that. Best producer in the world. $10 from Abel Medina, the best into to the show. I'm going to guess that it was intro.
Sure.
And somebody liked my impassioned plea. And so thank you very much, Abel. Much appreciated.
Mm-hmm. So we go back and forth, right?
Yes, go for it.
$10 from Trudy. I'm an atheist, but it mystifies me that brilliant people like Bob Dylan are believers. How can such smart people believe such silliness? Go fuck yourself. XO Matt. Oh, Jimmy. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Yeah, go fuck yourself,
Matt.
Jimmy.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. They're free to tell me that too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mind in the slightest. So Dylan's a confusing one for me as well. And seems to be all over the map at different points in his life, and that's fine. I just I don't like. I'm going to get in trouble. Sorry, just going to get in trouble. Whether or not somebody's an atheist is not, despite what some people think, the key factor in whether or not I'm willing to respect them, engage with them, work with them, like their work, etc. There are plenty of absolutely shitty atheists who you could not pay me to put on this show, including some who've been mentioned in chat tonight. Bob Dylan, I can appreciate his music and not have to worry about too much else from his character. If I find out that he's just generally terrible, I mean, there's plenty of like rock stars that I found out are just fucking awful, and I can't feel the same listening to their music. But like Petra was one of my favorite bands, and those guys were true musicians that produced some absolutely gorgeous music, and I can't listen to it anymore because I can't get past the message. I wish I could,
right?
Because things like Out of This World or Not of This World is just those guys were absolutely brilliant. There are other people who I think I'd be disappointed by. Like, I don't think Willie Nelson's going to disappoint me before he kicks the bucket. I just saw him in a Bic lighter commercial for one of those Bic lighters with the long stem on it, and they have him lighting a candle, but the audio is about how this is great because he's got a joint behind the candle. It keeps the flame away from my fingers, and now I can smell my favorite herb as he's lighting a candle. And I'm just like,
that's genius.
And it's not even just a weed thing, because I didn't really care that much about weed for most of my life. But I don't think Willie's going to disappoint me, even though Willie is probably a nominal believer of some stripe. Speaking of Willie.
Oh, speaking of.
This is Nilly. $13.99 Canadian and alleged dollars from Nilly Wilson. Great to see Stacy on the line. Can't wait to watch more of at the Stacy's Mom podcast, which is funny because you spelled Stacy two different ways, and the one in the at is the correct one. But the at
That's
isn't
right.
going to work because there's an apostasy. There's an apostrophe.
Oh, yeah.
And so, not to give away any spoilers, but your mom's story is a trip.
That's true. And yep, everyone should go subscribe. But I thank you for pointing out the misspelling of my name because it's my pet peeve. And I don't like being the one to point it out. So, but thank you for the
You're welcome.
shout out.
I'm not a big fan of Matthew, despite the fact that it actually is my name, so I don't throw a fit over it.
Right.
But the one that will get you dressing down is Matty. I freaking hate Matty.
Yeah, you just suit Matt. I'll just I'll call you Matt. $10 from PH. Just $10 for what you do. Thank you. Thank you for the $10.
Let's see. Here we go. 1999 from Janet Moorcraft. Stacy, spelled wrong, but we'll get there. How did your mother deconvert and what impact did it have on your father and extended family? Thank you for all you do.
Well, she deconverted. Just she always had major doubts, and again, her staying in it was the fear of hell. And she would come to me every so often and basically ask me certain questions like, so when you pray, do you really believe God will answer your prayer? And I'd be like, yep, absolutely. She was looking for cracks in my armor. And I was very strong. So she'd be like, oh, okay, no problem. And but if you want to know the whole story, we did just do her story last week, and she shared it on our podcast. So I won't go into the long version of it tonight. And as far as my father, my biological dad, I don't have any contact with. We are going to do a reaction or how our husbands reacted very soon, as well as our extended family. So we're going to go over all of that on our channel. So
awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, if you look down below the description or below the video in the description, about the fourth or fifth line down there that says find our guest, you will find Stacy's YouTube channel. You can go over there. They've got a kind of an introduction video already set up talking a little bit about this.
Yeah.
And then a couple of live streams. Wow. I just completely, weird heartburny thing just completely took my breath away in mid sentence right there. And I clicked away from the show, which is fine. I don't need to see the YouTube video, but I could have accidentally, if I'd have been on the other window, I would have clicked away from the show in a way where Arden would have been scrambling to get Stacy to wrap this up. Yeah. $20 from Insulin, and with no message. So can't hate that. And so here's another $20, or maybe the same $20 with Insulin. How common is it to stop believing before you're consciously aware of it? When I realized that I no longer believe, I thought back and realized that I had not believed for some time and wasn't consciously aware of it. This is a great question that I'm not going to have a thorough answer to. What we really need to do is get Shannon involved in this, because for me, from a philosophical standpoint, a belief is something where you consciously possess, or where your actions demonstrate that this belief is part of your psyche, even if you're not consciously aware of it. And so to say you stopped believing before you were consciously aware of it is a really difficult question. I think what you're describing, just most charitably, is there was a period of time where I probably didn't believe, but refused to address it. Like the protective mechanisms that religion had installed in my brain would take my doubts and disbelief and kind of compartmentalize those away, where you're still a believer, you're still a child of God, you're just kind of looking at this stuff. And I don't think that there's a moment where, boom, I just instantly stop believing. For some people, epiphanies like that can happen, but recognizing that you might have been engaged in some self-deception for a little while out of fear is, I think, pretty common for a lot of people, but I don't have any numbers or anything.
Yeah, it's probably different for each person because I think I stopped looking back, I'm like, okay, yeah, I definitely was stopped believing then, but it took me a few months to admit it. So yeah. $5 from Flipper. What does the Bible say, if anything, about trans people? And does that explain why evangelical nuts are against them?
Doesn't say a word because the concept really didn't truly exist at the time or in the vocabulary. It does say things that believers can use about men adorning themselves as women, which has nothing to do with trans people. It'd be closer to drag. But they'll use that. Basically, most of the hate against the trans community is very thinly veiled homophobia and bigotry against homosexuality, which is weird in a way because being trans has nothing to do with your sexuality. And you can be gay, straight, bi, pan, irrespective of your gender. And so somebody could be, it's really strange. I was at a wedding for two friends of mine, both of whom were trans women who married each other. And they, the perspective there is they were homosexuals the entire time. And prior to their transition, they were gay. And after the transition, they were lesbians. But that's still just clumsy with language because they were trans before as well, even before they came out or recognized or anything else. But yeah, the Bible is silent on the concept of transness, but it is absolutely homophobic. And that's where you're going to get some of the stuff that extends that way.
Yeah.
$10 from Jimmy Snow because vacation's not good enough. I'm going to, I saved this and did this in this order because I need to read this. It's my job. And I don't always do this part of my job particularly well. So Jimmy gives me a little kick in the ass on occasion. So here we go. Did you know we've recently been using a portion of Super Chat funds to invest in other channels and their production gear? If you've wondered if we're worth a Super Chat, that's one piece of it all. And I can tell you that, Noah was on the Sunday show with me. And if we had the opportunity to get Noah on as a regular on some of the shows, I would absolutely be already sending him a microphone, first of all, that can easily connect to his laptop so that we get better quality audio from him. Because while you could hear him and understand him, we want to have good quality audio, good quality video. It's one of the reasons why Stacy's now hooked up. And your super chats to the line don't just go to keep me knee deep in ball pythons and keep the lights on here at Dillahunty International Studios. They go to other efforts as well. There's a bunch of stuff coming up, including a get together next year, coordinated alongside the total solar eclipse. There'll be a nice little convention in the Austin area for that. And yeah, what Jimmy's saying is here, we're not just helping ourselves. We're doing other things to help other channels in the atheist community.
It's amazing. Thank you. $10 from Sean Blancher. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean, for making that really easy.
Yeah, very.
$11 Canadian from Rosie Raid. Seeing my favorite bands live and getting the same feeling I did there that I got at church and retreats was a big part of my deconstruction, deconversion. Couldn't possibly agree more.
Yes.
When I remember standing in church, getting goosebumps and feeling euphoric during praise services. And then I listened to, I saw a number of my favorite bands live at a venue called the Boathouse in Norfolk when I was fairly new to the Navy. I saw the Indigo Girls there. I saw the Church there. Wow, that was a concert. So I realized, hey, this is a similar experience out here, but also drugs, also sex. The experiences aren't identical, but understanding that we have similar elation and joy and the church service stuff are taking advantage of human psychology. Go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm sure maybe you were told the same thing, that getting goosebumps in praise and worship was the Holy Spirit being
Yep.
present, because that's what I was told. So when I got goosebumps at those concerts that were not Christian, I'd stop and be like, wait a second. How come the Holy Spirit is at this concert? Why am I feeling that way? And that also, I kind of filed it back as like I got to think about that
Yeah.
later, because it really made me stop and reevaluate the whole Holy Spirit
And
thing.
it's convincing. It reminds me a little bit of Rick from earlier before. When you're a kid or when you're in a community and you're there at church and you start to feel good, and you will,
Yeah.
and
Oh
you
yeah,
say, wow,
100%.
why do I feel this way? And everybody around you is like, that's the Holy Spirit. If there's 50 people around you saying this is what the Holy Spirit feels like, you just accept that, just like you accept it
Yes.
when you're Rick and somebody comes back and says they experienced heaven. And it wasn't
Yes.
until I was like, hang on, when I listen to XTC's Dear God, I feel the same way. And that's an anti-God type of song. And when I listen to, Alison Krauss, I mean, I could list off my all-time favorite voices. Half of them I've got probably, or a good chunk of them I got snakes named afterwards, Annie Lennox and Alison Krauss, Tori Amos, just amazing. And plenty of guys too. It's just those are the ones that came to mind. I'm overwhelmed by Rush and Pink Floyd, and oh my gosh, let's just not list our favorite bands for all the rest of this
We'll
super
be
chat.
here
We
all
got
night.
things to get to, but thank you, Rosie, for that great topic.
Thank you. Is it my turn? $10
Go
from
for it.
Satan's Little Helper. My employees, 150, are always trying to convince me to Christianity out of respect for my employees. I don't engage in religious debates with them, but they will deal with my little demon plush on my desk.
It's good to be the boss sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Satan's Little Helper continues for another $10. And thank you so much, Satan's Little Helper. I'm always confused on this flood story. 8 people survived. What do they know? They can't repopulate the earth. There's this big thing called incest, meaning if you can't find new friends, you go bye-bye. So it wasn't fully incest, although it's incest from the beginning with Adam and Eve and their offspring, if in fact they were the first two. The 8 that survived Noah are Noah and his wife, Noah's 3 sons and their wives. And one of the things you'll find from some apologists, this is obvious bullshit that we have zero evidence for and mountains of evidence against, is that Genesis talks about people who Methuselah lived to be 969 years old. No, he fucking didn't. If he lived at all, he did not live to be 969 years old. But the way they rationalize all that is they say the earth was new and wasn't corrupted. And so the genetic pool coming from the purity of Adam and Eve allowed people to live for centuries back then in order to rapidly increase the population of the planet. And over time, the genetic diversity has been kind of poisoned to the fact that we live less and less time. Not only is it absurd to think that people were living for 9 centuries or 7 centuries or 6 centuries in the case of Noah, but we know from all of the actual scientific data that we've been able to gather tracking longevity. We live longer on average now than ever. And the Bible even basically says 70 your 70-year allotment. We outlive that consistently. And in Japan, where they're predominantly not Christian, they outlive all of us.
Wow.
It's just wild.
Yep.
Your Bible and your beliefs about your Bible aren't just wrong, they're fractally wrong. Fractal wrongness is a concept that you are wrong at every conceivable resolution. But
wow.
Stumbling over my words a bit.
$10 from Matt Peters. Penance for lying to Arden about Martin Sheen. That's something in the
well
chat.
Done. Yeah, it was something that took place in chat. By the way, I realized that you guys already sorted this out in chat. But as soon as we're done with the super chats, I will be telling you all who's with me next week, although you've already figured it out. $20 Canadian, alleged money from the wonderful Kathleen Moncrief. I love this community, and we love you right back. And I would love you even if you weren't consistently donating fake money to us, because it's just awesome. My Wednesdays
Canada,
are better. Yes. It's a standing joke that it's not real.
I know. I know.
But
I like that joke, but it just.
I love Canada. I may end up dying there.
Ooh, come.
Well, as the healthcare situation in the United States gets worse and worse for me, also in Canada, we could, I think, maintain our entire collection of reptiles, and we could have a Fiji banded lizard, which Arden desperately wants, but we're not allowed to have in the United States.
Bad.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Arden, come.
Yeah. I
That
knew
would
there's
be
no way in
awesome.
hell she wasn't going to chime in on that one.
Okay. That would be amazing.
Fiji banded iguanas are amazing looking.
Oh,
Hey, Skeptics and Scoundrels.
$10 from Skeptics and Scoundrels. I love this community. Yep.
Although
Yes,
he didn't
Eric
say I
is
love this
awesome.
community.
Mhm.
He said I love community
love
in response to
Community.
Kathleen.
Sorry, I just put
Maybe it's the
this.
show.
Yeah.
I've never watched Community, but I think
That's
there's a show.
true.
So that could be a joke.
I
You'll have to
read
let us
into
know what
that,
you
I'm
love.
sorry.
Nah,
I
having
just got
fun.
excited seeing his name. Yeah.
All the Canadians are out today, so there's another $11 Canadian from Ojo Joshua. It's cool that the theist caller to realize the plagiarism of the Epic of Gilgamesh about 1,000 years earlier is the source of the biblical flood story. Joshua from Abidjan. Oh, from the Ivory Coast. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it correctly,
I'm
but
glad
thank you,
read
Joshua.
this.
Yeah, Côte d'Ivoire is
There
a
you go.
terrible pronunciation on my part for the Ivory Coast in Africa.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Okay. And there's one more part, but yes.
Oh, there was one more part?
It was the abbreviation. Jimmy.
Oh,
go
there was
fuck yourself.
Jimmy, go fuck
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. $9.99 from DJ. How do you deal with a friend that implies you have no morals for your lack of belief? Lack belief. Yeah.
All you.
Oh, me. Okay.
If a friend came up to you and said,
okay.
Stacy, you
Yeah.
just can't be moral because you're an
Yeah.
atheist, what do you do?
I would say that's ridiculous. That's just a straw man. And honestly, other than the fact that my life has gotten better as far as I no longer live in this thought prison, I don't have so much condemnation that is just put on me all the time. My morals are exactly the same. I would it's just not true. There's no evidence. That's not true. So, they would have to just be around me and see that there's no fact in that claim whatsoever. And they can see the evidence in my life.
Yeah.
Like you said, in Penn Jillette, I go around murdering and raping as much as I want to, and that's
Yep.
zero. So, yeah, I mean, I love my life even more now because I have a lot of freedom just to explore new ideas and go to drag shows. That's the most fun thing that I do. But as far as morals, no, we're still teaching our kids, you don't lie to people. Today my son called his other son or his brother, just a not nice name. And we were like, no, you can't treat people badly. You can't call people names. If anything, we're teaching them to be more inclusive and more accepting. So no, I think I have more morals than I did in the church. So yeah.
I loved everything about Stacy's answer, but I do want to say this.
Yeah.
I love the fact at the beginning you were just like, that's ridiculous. And that's important. You guys watch us on these shows, and don't get me wrong, I love to vamp, and I love to go on little trails of let me be the humanist chaplain to tell you how we need to love each other more and better and do this and blah, 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 blah. You don't owe anybody an explanation for who you are, what you think, anybody else. Anybody gets in your face and says, wow, you're an atheist, that means you can't be immoral. I'd be fine with just saying, okay, whatever.
And moving along. Yeah.
That's true. Any other attacks you'd like to throw out there? Or would you actually like to get to know me? Would you like to have a discussion about morals? Because my morals don't include the ones that your religion pushes, that's for sure. But I find your religion's morals to be rather repugnant. How about we see if we can figure out if there's any common ground at all? But if all you're going to do is just decide to stuff me in the little box that makes it comfortable for you, I'm not here to make your life comfortable. I'll get on with my life. You get on with yours. I like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Why waste any time on it?
Yeah.
$10 from Richmond Dies. I've been an atheist for years, but the one thing that stumps me is when somebody says they have a personal relationship with God. Jimmy, go fuck yourself, and you both are doing a great job. Thanks, Richmond. I think this is an incredibly difficult one for me because I believed that I did have a personal relationship with the risen Christ. But now that I know what I actually meant by that, I know that I did not have that relationship. And the temptation is for me to say, everybody else who says they have a relationship is under the same delusion or lie that I was engaged in. And that is a mistake, because I don't know whether or not they have a personal relationship with anybody. And I can't know. And so it would be a mistake for me to say, you are also deceived in the way that I was deceived. I will do that on certain occasions and certain things when somebody's demonstrated, an active form of delusion or whatever else. But maybe there is a God, and maybe he's got a relationship with Stacy's cousin. And we didn't mention a single cousin. Yeah. I'm just picking something at random.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I can't prove that it's that way. But what I can say is that, Richmond, now that I realize, I don't think I wasn't knowingly lying. I was deceived and was representing what I felt and what I thought in the language that had been given to me. In the same way that when you feel euphoria and people say, this is the Holy Spirit, that was the only language I had to describe it. I walked down the aisle at the age of 4 or 5 at a revival to accept Jesus into my heart. Everything about the language of that religion was infused in me from the moment I crawled out of the womb until I got free. And you're just going to use the language that you have then. So when somebody says that, take them at their word that they're honestly trying to convey how they feel about something, given the limited language they have for something that we don't understand and we can't disprove.
Yeah. Agreed. $9.99 from Chakuseki. I got crazy goosebumps the first time I listened to the hit single from Fergal Burgle and the Manergal Burgles.
Wow, well done.
I can say it.
You can say it. Fergal Burgle, Manergal Burgle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Chakuseki. That's fun. That's a long. I have a fondness for jokes that take a long road to get to a really weak punchline. But to get a little Fergal Burgle, Manergal Burgle in there, well done.
Oh, wow.
$49.99 from WE starring with no message at all.
Nice.
I don't know if you had a message, but we greatly appreciate the support, irrespective of any message. I got one more super chat left. And before I read it, let me say this. I'm going to read this. And then I'm going to start working towards the thing that I do every show, which is I tell you what's coming up and I promote the other shows and I thank everybody who's here. And inevitably, somebody tries to get a super chat in after that. I'm going to sit here and keep staring at the page. If you get your super chat in before I finish and say, thank you very much, everybody, we'll see you next week, or whatever it is I say at the close of it, I will jump back in to actually read those super chats. If I don't, which is what happened on Monday's Cus I Wanna, somebody whose name escapes me now got 2 super chats in while I was doing my closing diatribe, and we just didn't read it.
I think it's Claire, right?
Is it Claire? It was Claire. Claire got 2 super chats in. Thank you so much, Claire. I wish I still had them here. I would read them now, even though it's for a different show. But that's how this is going to go. Please don't think you've been slighted if you get it in just a smidge later than my closing monologue is likely to hit. So, Stephanie, you get to read this last one unless a new one comes in.
Okay, $10
or Stacy, you get to read this from Stephanie.
Okay, it's from Stephanie. Yeah, $10 from Stephanie Helms. Hey, Stephanie, what a year! It'll get better.
I certainly hope so. It has been a wild. I feel like it's been a wild 7 years or so. And yes, I'm keeping time from pre-Trump versus post-Trump, and not just because of Trump. I feel there were a great many changes that took place in that time frame, not the least of which is a global pandemic and the loss of the United States Supreme Court and overturning Roe v. Wade. And we've got Russia and Ukraine, and we have massive attacks on the LGBT community in Texas and in Florida and elsewhere. By the way, we did just get a super chat in from Sarah Christine, which says, "Hi, Matt." So well done, perfect. I put the bait out there, you took it, and everything else. Let me tell you guys what's coming up. First of all, the Line Network is growing, and it's wonderful because we have now officially crossed the 85,000 subscriber line.
Yay.
Just the other day, we were at like 84,700, and right now it just says 85K. I don't know how much we are above that. Please give a like right now. We're still at 452. We'd like to get to 666 on the likes at least, so somebody can get a screenshot of it and then send it on like that. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Your participation here in chat really does help, but your participation by subscribing and liking, that also helps. If you're not able to contribute financially, just supporting the show, getting people to call in, spreading the word helps us out. And as you know, we're also trying to help other networks and other shows out as well. Let me go back here to my super chat list so that it's up where I can see it on the side. Coming up this week, today's Wednesday, and thank you hugely to Stacy for agreeing to come on here. I want you to come back, and I hope we get some theistic callers and we can have some fun conversing with them. It's been a week, a week, a W-E-A-K, a week for theistic callers kind of across the line. I know schools getting out of session, there are fewer people, involved and everything else. We'll see how that changes. But Sunday, on the Sunday show, Jimmy and I will be back. And if you're a theist, that's your prime opportunity to get prime viewership from the #1 live call-in atheist show on the planet. You have that opportunity to come in and interact with us here. And if you do well enough, not only will that get promotion for you and your religion in the show, but in clips about that show. And you can then apply to be on NBoss and say, I called in, I think I did good, I think we can do better. And then we'll get you into NBoss for that format. So that show next week on Sunday will be myself and Jimmy, who'll be back from vacation and ready to work, although he's been in chat and doing stuff this whole time. He even helped mess with some camera stuff beforehand. So the guy never fully takes time off. Yeah, never fully takes time off. Next Monday, Skeptalk will be John Gleason with a special guest. Next Tuesday's Dying Out Loud will be Dave Warnock with Owen Morgan, Telltale Atheist, both of whom I really like talking to. And Owen was just helpful to me the other day out of the blue. Next Wednesday on the Hang Up will be me and Arden Hart. The lovely Arden, who has my heart and is down the hall holding it hostage.
That is so awesome.
There's for the Atheist Debates Project, one of the things that I've done, one of the things I've always tried to do, whether it was on the Atheist Experience or here, is do what we can to promote other channels, smaller channels, get people who I think we can all benefit from listening to, but maybe don't have a platform as big as ours. Let's get them on the show. So I put a bunch of people on Atheist Experience. I help promote other shows there and here. But one of my favorite things was anybody that I kind of, my brain latched onto is I need to know more about this person, or other people need to know that. Before I was working with the Line and could just have people on the Hang Up, I would sit down and do interviews with other activists, if they happen to be in the Austin area. And I did a sit down interview with Arden and I, and it's unusual because we weren't together then. And so the two of us are sitting there talking, and it was obvious then how much we had in common. And now next month, Arden and I, in 19 days or 20 days, it'll be the 2-year anniversary of our first date. And we've been here. So maybe I'll be gone that particular weekend, but maybe when I get back, we'll deal a little bit with that. But yes, that is next Wednesday's guest on the Hang Up. I can imagine you're wanting to know exactly what I'm gonna be hung up on, and it's gonna be her. By the way, Northern Spike just sent in a super chat for $20 right at the end of my monologue, exactly as predicted. Everybody who didn't send in $20 at the end of my monologue, getting me to address it, you guys all failed. I set up this amazing test to try to throw me off, and only Sarah Christine, and Northern Spike managed to get in there and do that. Thanks, everybody. You guys always make my Wednesdays awesome. I genuinely feel better than I did 3 hours ago, and I look forward to doing it again next week with the beauty down the hall. Thanks, Stacy. Everybody else, take care of yourselves. We'll see you. Check out the shows. Good night.
Bye.
They can still hear us, but that's the kind of inner joke. I love this.
Yes.
It's like, oh, is this song the same as last week? Yes, it is.
Yep.
We'll use it next week too.